All rise for the jury.
A moment every American watched, including the family of George Floyd.
Please be seated.
In the 60 seconds it took for the jury to sit and the judge to read the verdict, the tension in a Minnesota courtroom only grew.
Count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony. Find the defendant guilty. As to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act. Find the defendant guilty. As to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk. Find the defendant guilty.
The name George Floyd, a name that is now synonymous with the Black Lives Matter movement. He should be alive today.
His family and legions of protesters spent nearly a year demonstrating, using justice for George Floyd as a rallying cry. Today, protesters chanted all 3 counts instead after a jury found Derek Chauvin guilty on all 3 counts associated with Floyd's death.
President Biden is expected to discuss the verdict publicly at some point tonight. We know he called Floyd's family after the verdict was read, and here's video of that.
We've been talking, we've been watching every second of this, and the vice president, all of us, and we're all so relieved, not just the one verdict, but all 3, guilty on all 3 counts.
Republicans have criticized Biden for publicly saying he prayed jurors would make the right decision. Tonight, cities across the country are preparing for people to gather in the wake of this verdict. We saw businesses boarding up here in downtown Denver. Similar scenes played out in Philadelphia, D.C., and New York City.
But there will not be a bigger gathering than the one in Minneapolis tonight, and that is where ABC's Rena Roy leads our team coverage tonight. Rena?
The city here was absolutely silent as the verdict was read, and seconds later, all you could hear were people cheering and honking their horns. Many now feel that justice has been served. After 10.5 hours of deliberation, the jury has come to a verdict in the murder trial of Derek Chauvin.
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty.
Convicted on all 3 charges, he showed no emotion as he was cuffed and taken back into custody.
For a high-profile case, this is a pretty fast verdict. When the world is watching, the jurors typically want to cross the T's and dot the I's and make it clear to the world that they very carefully considered the evidence.
Monday, jurors heard 6 hours of closing arguments from both sides after nearly 3 weeks of powerful testimony and supporting evidence. Prosecutors arguing Chauvin's action killed Floyd. The defense hoping to create reasonable doubt, saying his use of force was justified, blaming Floyd's drug and heart issues for his death.
Mr. Chauvin should be found not guilty of all counts.
What the defendant did to George Floyd killed him.
The diverse jury, ages ranging from 20s to 60s, 5 men and 7 women, 4 black, 6 white, and 2 self-identify as multiracial.
When there are no questions, when there are no clarifications asked by a jury for jury instructions, when you have nothing to read from the jury, a fast verdict like this indicates that there is a full agreement.
And within minutes of that verdict, we heard from many of Colorado's elected leaders. Senator John Hickenlooper saying Black Americans deserve a world in which their lives aren't threatened by the very people sworn to protect them. We must reform a broken system that continues to allow these tragedies to happen.
Denver7's Liz Gilardi joins us from the state capitol tonight with more passionate reaction from our lawmakers. Liz.
The state capitol, some lawmakers with the Black Caucus actually watched that verdict together, and just a short time ago they held a press conference, and at times they were emotional, and we are watching those reactions unfold really across the country. Colorado lawmakers we talked to are expressing relief, but they also say there's still more work to do. You might remember last year Colorado passed several police reform measures, including being the first state to end qualified immunity, which often protects police from being sued. State Representative Leslie Herod described watching the verdict with her colleagues.
And I think we're still shell-shocked, to be honest with you. We looked at each other about 12 times, wanted to hear again the verdict, Did you hear the same thing? Because it was unbelievable that someone was finally prosecuted for murdering someone in our community.
Yeah, just powerful comments from some of our elected leaders. And outside the state capitol, we're also seeing them take steps to secure the buildings. Concrete barriers have went up around the capitol, and also all of the cars have been moved just as a preventative measure. We know several groups are planning to gather here this evening. Reporting live, Liz Gilardi, Denver7.
All right, thank you, Liz. And it is a verdict that many in law enforcement were also watching closely. Denver's chief of police, Paul Pazin, said in a statement he respects the judicial process and hopes this verdict allows the community to heal.
And we asked CU professor and legal expert Aya Gruber how this case compares to other incidents of police violence.
You say, like, look, these are just bad apples, and here we're now convicting them and the problem is solved. You know, I think that we're not going to see a lot of those structural changes. But if the pressure keeps up yes, this is part of the equation, was the individual. But the individual operated within a system, an institution, and a history, and we need to keep examining that. Then I think we'll see changes.
And Denver Mayor Michael Hancock is joining us now. And Mr. Mayor, I know you watched the verdict being read like most of the country. What were your thoughts and feelings?
Emotional. It was a very, very emotional time. I found myself, quite frankly, with tears in my eyes, because as I think Representative Herod alluded to it, as African Americans, we have never been able to take for granted that when these sort of heinous crimes have happened in our community, we could not take for granted that there would be a conviction and that justice would be served. Today, justice was served, and that is pleasing. But as your last speaker talked about, we have a lot of work that still needs to be done, and we have to be committed to that mission.
And Mayor, how has this case, as you watched it in the Black Lives Matter movement, changed the way you do your job and the way Denver police do their jobs?
Well, the reality is that the Black Lives Matter movement and the social movement around social and racial justice today is really the civil rights movement of our time. And we stand on the shoulders of so many giants today. I was watching as Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton were speaking today, and I think about the path in which they've come. We stand on their shoulders and the pathway and the battles that they fought for us, the John Lewis battles, Martin Luther King, and all the great contemporaries. And so while I'm serving as mayor, I look at it as really an honor and privilege to serve in the midst of this movement to bring about structural changes necessary so that we can hopefully take for granted that people will be held accountable when these types of acts occur in our community.
And one final question, you just mentioned structural change. You called this a powerful moment for equal justice in society, yet this is just one case.
This is just one case. And it serves, though, as a powerful symbol of how I believe we're beginning, society is changing, how police officers are going to be held accountable when they step over the line and unfortunately result in the sort of things that we've seen in the last few months. And that there's a system in place and that people are watching and that the community's not going to stand for it anymore. Hopefully this opens up the Pandora's box where there is justice served and accountability for everyone involved in these sort of cases. One case, though, sometimes it takes one, and hopefully George Floyd's life was not lost in vain, and we can now move toward a direction of crossing that Edmund Pettus Bridge truthfully and with justice for all, and that we can count on those who are sworn to protect us. That's what we've all hoped for, and that's what we have to keep working for.
Mayor Hancock, thank you so much.
All right,
thank you.
And our coverage of this verdict continues right now on Denver7 News for your favorite streaming device, where you can find reaction to the verdict, plus a breakdown of everything we saw during the week's long trial.
It'll be dry but cold tonight, but there'll be more snow heading our way tomorrow.
Plus, come and get it. There is so much vaccine available that in some places you can just show up and get your shot.
It's never been easier to find a vaccine, and that's wonderful to see.
And a child sex sweep catches 10 people in Aurora.